Teacher calls black boy a liar about his dad's job, went silent when 4-star general walked in. There are moments in life that quietly pass by, and then there are moments that split time in two, before and after. The kind of moments that leave a permanent mark on everyone who witnesses them. The kind of moments that expose pride, prejudice, truth, and humility all at once. This is one of those moments. It begins in a normal school. A regular classroom. Ordinary desks, buzzing fluorescent lights, dusty textbooks, and the low hum of teenage chatter. Nothing about that Tuesday morning hinted that history, personal, painful, unforgettable history, was about to be made. At the center of it all was a quiet black boy with worn sneakers and a soft voice. He wasn't the loudest. He wasn't the most popular. He wasn't the kind of kid teachers singled out for praise or attention. He blended into the background. Until the day he answered one simple question. What does your father do for a living? A harmless question. A simple answer. But that answer triggered something ugly. It triggered laughter. Doubt. Accusations. And finally, words that should never be said to a child. Stop lying. What followed would expose a classroom. A teacher. And an entire system of assumptions. And when the truth finally walked through that door, it didn't whisper. It arrived in uniform. 4 stars shining. And silence fell like thunder. This story is about dignity. It is about pride. It is about what happens when you underestimate the wrong child. And what happens when the truth finally stands up. The story. The bell rang at exactly 8:30 a.m., echoing down the beige hallway of Lincoln Ridge Middle School. Students shuffled into room 214, dragging backpacks, yawning, scrolling phones before slipping them away. Posters of multiplication tables and motivational quotes hung crookedly on the walls. At desk 14, near the window, sat Marcus Hill. Marcus was 12 years old. Slim. Dark-skinned. Short-cropped hair. His sneakers were faded, the soles peeling slightly at the edges. His backpack had a broken zipper held together with a safety pin. He always sat quietly, hands folded, eyes down unless spoken to. To most people, Marcus was invisible. To Mrs. Elaine Patterson, he was that quiet boy. Mrs. Patterson had been teaching for nearly 23 years. She was efficient, organized, and firm, sometimes painfully so. She believed strongly in discipline, order, and calling out nonsense. That morning, she stood at the front of the class holding a clipboard. Today, she said briskly, we're going to practice speaking in front of the class. I want each of you to stand up and tell us what your parents do for a living. Groans filled the room. One by one, students stood. My dad's an accountant. My mom works at Target. My parents own a salon. Polite nods. Occasional claps. Then Mrs. Patterson called, Marcus Hill. Marcus stood slowly. He cleared his throat. My dad is in the army, he said softly. He's a general. The room went quiet for a second. Then someone snorted. A few kids giggled. A boy in the back whispered loudly, yeah right. Mrs. Patterson tilted her head, lips tightening. A general, she repeated. Yes, ma'am. She raised an eyebrow. A 4-star general? Marcus nodded. Yes, ma'am. The giggles grew louder. Mrs. Patterson let out a short laugh. Marcus, you need to be honest. I am honest, he said quietly. She sighed. You don't need to exaggerate to sound impressive. I'm not exaggerating. A few students began whispering. Mrs. Patterson crossed her arms. Marcus, do you even know what a 4-star general is? Yes, ma'am. Then you should also know how unlikely that is. Marcus swallowed. But it's true. Her tone hardened. Young man, this is not a time for storytelling. Please tell the class what your father really does. He looked around. Every eye was on him now. He really is a 4-star general. The laughter burst. One boy said, "My uncle's the president then." Mrs. Patterson slapped her clipboard against her palm. Enough. Marcus, sit down. He hesitated. But. I said sit down. Marcus slowly lowered himself into his chair, his ears burning. His hands trembled under the desk. Mrs. Patterson muttered loudly, "Some kids will say anything for attention." That sentence sank into him like a knife. For the rest of the day, Marcus didn't speak. He kept his head down through math, science, lunch, and history. When the bell finally rang at dismissal, he walked home alone. He didn't tell his mother what happened. He didn't tell his father either. Not that night. Not the next day. But something was already in motion. 3 days later, Lincoln Ridge Middle School prepared for its annual Veterans Appreciation Assembly. A special guest had been invited. A very special guest. The principal, Dr. Wallace, paced nervously in his office as his secretary peeked in. "Ma'am," she whispered, "the motorcade is pulling up." Dr. Wallace straightened his tie. "Everyone ready?" "Yes, sir." Outside, black SUVs rolled into the parking lot. Students pressed their faces to classroom windows. Teachers whispered. Room 214 buzzed with excitement. Mrs. Patterson clapped her hands. "Okay, class. Line up. We're going to the auditorium." Marcus stood slowly, his stomach twisting. He had no idea. The auditorium was packed. Red curtains. Shining stage lights. A large banner read, "Honoring those who serve." The principal stepped to the microphone. "Students and staff," he began, "today we are deeply honored to welcome a man whose service has shaped our nation's defense." Marcus froze when he heard the name. "Please welcome General David Hill, United States Army, 4-star general." The doors at the side of the auditorium opened. Boots clicked. Uniform pressed. Medals glittered. 4 silver stars gleamed on his shoulders. Marcus's father walked in. The room exploded with applause. Mrs. Patterson's smile froze on her face. Her clipboard slipped slightly from her grip. She stared. And stared. And stared. Marcus slowly lifted his head. And for the first time in days, he smiled. The applause thundered through the auditorium as General David Hill walked steadily toward the stage. His boots struck the polished floor in perfect rhythm, each step echoing like a drumbeat of authority. Cameras flashed. Teachers straightened their posture. Students whispered in awe. But in row F, seat 14, one teacher sat perfectly still. Mrs. Elaine Patterson's face had gone pale. Her fingers tightened around her clipboard so hard her knuckles turned white. Her eyes slowly drifted toward the small, slim boy sitting 3 rows ahead, the same boy she had dismissed, mocked, and publicly accused of lying. Marcus Hill. The same Marcus who had quietly told her the truth. Her heart dropped. On stage, Dr. Wallace stepped aside. "General Hill has graciously agreed to speak with us today about service, leadership, and integrity." General Hill nodded respectfully. His voice was calm, deep, and powerful. "Good morning," he said. The room fell into complete silence. "My father taught me that leadership is not about your rank, it's about how you treat people, especially those who cannot defend themselves." Marcus swallowed hard. "My mother taught me that humility is strength." The general's eyes slowly scanned the room, and then locked onto Marcus. A subtle smile touched his lips. "My son attends this school." A ripple of whispers ran through the crowd. Marcus felt hundreds of eyes turned toward him. General Hill continued, "He is a quiet boy. Kind. honest, and braver than he knows. Mrs. Patterson's clipboard slipped and hit the floor with a sharp clack. No one laughed. No one whispered. They were all staring at Marcus. After the assembly, teachers were instructed to escort their students back to class. But Dr. Wallace raised his hand. "Mrs. Patterson," he called gently, "could you please bring Marcus Hill forward?" Her legs felt like cement, but she obeyed. Marcus walked slowly to the stage, heart pounding. General Hill stepped down and knelt in front of his son. "Hey, champ," he whispered. "You okay?" Marcus nodded, though his eyes were wet. "I heard someone questioned your honesty," the general said, not loudly, but clearly enough for the front rows to hear. Mrs. Patterson's face burned. "My son does not lie." Silence. "Not about who he is. Not about where he comes from." General Hill stood. His presence suddenly felt even larger. "I would like to speak privately with the principal and his teacher." Inside Dr. Wallace's office, the air felt thick. Mrs. Patterson sat stiffly, hands clasped. General Hill remained calm, but his eyes carried weight. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "my son told me what happened." Her voice trembled. "Sir, I didn't know." "You didn't know," he repeated softly, "or you didn't believe him." She swallowed. "I didn't believe him." "And why not?" She hesitated. "Too long." Dar. Wallace cleared his throat. General Hill didn't raise his voice. "He didn't need to. You publicly humiliated my child. You accused him of lying. You encouraged others to mock him." Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I believe you are," he replied. "But being sorry does not erase harm." He turned to Dr. Wallace. "I expect appropriate action." 2 weeks later, a letter went home to parents. Mrs. Elaine Patterson had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Workshops on implicit bias, respect, and student dignity were implemented across the school. Marcus received a personal apology, handwritten, from Mrs. Patterson. He never went back to her classroom. He didn't need to. He had learned something far more important. That his truth mattered. That his voice mattered. And that he was never invisible. Years later, Marcus would stand tall in his own uniform. Not 4 stars, yet. But his father watched proudly as he saluted. And this time, no one laughed. No one doubted. No one dared. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that expose truth, courage, and justice.